Unit 6, period 6, is the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age is the time period from the end of Reconstruction up until the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century. So, what we have is westward population growth before the Civil War, um, caused by many factors, including like the gold rush, and it's interrupted by the Civil War and then continues after the Civil War. This westward population growth has an impact on Native Americans. During Andrew Jackson's presidency, in our class known as Jacksonian, the beginning of Jacksonian democracy, one of the characteristics of Jacksonian democracy was nationalism and, to be specific, the removal of Native Americans east of the Mississippi River. When Jackson and the Democrats removed those Indians forcibly, they did not tell them exactly where to go. So Native Americans moved to many different areas of the Great Plains in the West. Now, in 1876, gold is discovered up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and Americans are moving there to as prospectors for the gold. Well, they're moving into areas controlled by Native Americans. In fact, a specific Native American confederation had been formed by a Native American named Sitting Bull, who was a chief of the Sioux Indians. He wants to stop this westward migration of Americans and leads a battle against American forces led by an American officer named General George Armstrong Custer. He was sent out to push the Indians away from the Black Hills so the prospectors would be safe in their discovery of gold. A famous battle occurred in the Black Hills at this location, a river named Little Bighorn. This battle becomes known famously as the Battle of Little Bighorn and Custer's last stand. George Armstrong Custer had a force of about 600 cavalry soldiers, and he made a mistake by dividing them up into three parts, about 200 men each. He sent part of his unit down the Little Bighorn, and the idea was they were going to flank the Indians and surround them, and Custer was going to attack up the middle. Well, this strategy failed because Sitting Bull's one of his chief under his command, named Crazy Horse, had set up an ambush, and he and about 4,000 braves ambushed George Armstrong Custer, killing Custer and all 200 of his men. Word got back to the east and to the American people back in the east that this group of American soldiers had been slaughtered, and it led to a lot of public anger towards the Native Americans, and this began the Indian Wars in 1876. Hundreds and maybe even thousands of battles were fought between Native Americans and American troops, and the war did not end until 1890 at a Wounded Knee in South Dakota. It's a creek in South Dakota. What happened resulted from two events. One was a Paiute medicine man had shown Sitting Bull's tribe a dance that he had been taught through the Great Spirit, that the Great Spirit told them would drive the white man away. And this became known as the ghost dance. We had talked about the ghost dance previously in Unit 1, Period 1, when we talked about the Paiute Indians, and they had used the dance to help themselves with the production of food and to drive away enemies. Well, the Sioux Indians used this dance as a sign of rebellion against the Americans that ran the reservations and attempted to put them on the reservations in the West. This is a real picture of Native Americans doing the ghost dance. The second factor that led to Wounded Knee was the death of Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull had finally agreed to go on a reservation, but was killed by Indian police in a skirmish. His surviving members of his tribe attempted to escape the reservation and go to a different reservation. They were trapped by Custer's old troop, the 7th Cavalry, and using Gatling guns, the soldiers opened fire on the Indians, and 300 of the Sioux Indians were killed of the 400, mostly old men and women and children. This event led to public sympathy back in the East, and it led to an end of the Indian Wars.